Not your average tabletop. Woohoo!
Welcome back to Not Your Average Tabletop. I'm Zach.
And I'm Pepper.
And today we're doing a CHIPPI review of Ethnos.
Ethnos. This was, I was going to say, one of the earlier games to our collection, but I think it was probably in that maybe second quarter of games. So still pretty early on before we got 3 full Calyx shelves of games, for sure.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the earlier ones. We've had it for quite a while now, I think. Yeah. Probably a few years, at least.
Pretty familiar with it, so we thought it'd be a good time. We're also going through our A to Z, going through our collection from A to Z and reviewing games along the way, and we hit E and thought it was a good time to talk about this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was... What... I guess where do you want to start with this one?
I don't know. Where do you want to start? Where do we usually start?
We will start with the core mechanics.
The core mechanics.
CHIPPI.
The C in CHIPPI.
I'll just start off with a big old 9 in that for me.
Ooh, wow.
I really love the double set collection in this.
Double.
The double set collection. Where you're not only possibly collecting colors, but also collecting bands of a specific race or whatever in this game.
Yeah.
I really like how you can kind of go for either one. Sometimes, or most of the times, it seems like you'll be trying for one of them, and then eventually decide to go to something else.
And then you'll get some more of this color, and maybe pivot over towards that.
Mm-hmm. So I really like how that works. I don't know. I'm sure there's other games that do something like it, but I really like it in this game. And just the different abilities that each faction brings to the game. It just makes each game experience a little bit different because you can mix and match. You don't use all of them at once. You use I think it depends on the player count, like 5 or 6 or something. And then another thing I really like is how the area control in this works, where it's based on the size of your set that you're making, whether or not you can add a chip to a certain area. And that's also based on your leader that you have to choose for which color area you're going to control. And then I think the other big thing is the random end game trigger, where there's 3 dragon cards, and once the third one's pulled, the round ends immediately, or the game, depending on what part of the game you're in. And that really gives you that little bit of push your luck that I really find interesting. I like how it's kind of a delayed thing, but at the same time, once one of them goes, they could just go bam, bam, bam.
Yeah.
Or you could possibly have it be, one come really early, or about as early as it can come, because I think they're putting kind of the later half of the deck. Yeah. And then you could have the third one just be the last card, so it really doesn't matter, but kind of keeps you on your feet.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that's keeping this one from being higher would be just a little bit of luck factor in it. As to, I think a lot of the time you're just drawing cards, and depending on what you get, it could be really lucky for you, or kind of just have a mess of cards in your hand.
Yeah, I'm right with you here. I have a 9 as well for core mechanics. It's just, again, I didn't write that down, but that end game trigger is actually, I usually like a little notice. Like maybe one more round, but this one it actually works where it just ends like that. I really like it. But yeah, just that set collection there and all the different things you can do with it. You can either go for the race or the color, and then maybe you really want to push. Again, there's a little bit of push your luck in drawing cards, because your hand can get really tight because you're drawing cards, and you can't discard cards, because the only time to discard cards is when you play a set, and other than some faction abilities will let you mitigate it, but when you play a set, you put the rest of your cards that weren't included in that set out to the market for everyone to buy. So there's a little push your luck in, should I just play this set now, or should I draw cards and maybe get ones that I would like, and now I'm just going to give them to the other players. So I really like that, and just kind of, it's a little tight in the hand, but either choosing between race or color, I think that helps mitigate it just enough.
Yeah, I agree, because your hand limit is 10 in the game, so that's what kind of keeps you on the edge. But then sometimes I think I think it almost alleviates like pushing your luck sometimes, because
Yeah.
sometimes you're at 9 and it's like, what's one more card at
Yeah,
this point?
yeah.
So I do like that little bit of stress though of, wow, my hand is a huge mess, and now even if I play my best one, I'm going to be showing 6 card, or there's going to
Yeah.
be 6 available cards
Yeah.
out instead of drawing from the top
It's
of the
like
deck
it,
and not
and then
knowing
you
what
math
you're
it
gonna
out, and it's like I'll be able to possibly get 2 of those back if I really like them.
get. Right. But yeah, so 2 9s there.
Yeah,
History.
on to
I think
history.
we've probably both played it 10 times.
Yeah,
so.
I have this down as a 10.
Yeah,
So
so-
for sure.
Yep. 10.
And none of those times I have won.
I'm sure you
never won this game.
Yeah,
So
you just claim
We'll
that.
see how that affects the final rating.
Wow. But investment, what do you got for that?
Investment. This one was a little tough, but I ended up giving it a 9 as well. I think, the variability with all the different factions and which ones you include in the game can really change up how the game plays. And just, I don't know, I just really like I said, really like that hand management, that it's still fresh for me. And I don't find replayability to be a problem. I wish there were more expansions, possibly. I think there's a couple promo different things that you can get, but it feels like a game like Dominion where you could just get a ton of different powers for those cards. But sadly, so far, I have not heard of anything.
No. Yeah, I was honestly going to write almost that same exact thing down, as it feels like a game like a Dominion that just is asking for expansions or additional factions. Could be almost endless. I'm sure there'd be a point where then you'd start repeating things and stuff, but I think there still could be at least one solid expansion of maybe 10 new things if they wanted to do it. And I'd be all for it, but yeah, I agree. I have a 9 for it as well. Because it's a really quick game too. It's very snappy. The turns are snappy because you're either deciding whether to take a card or play cards.
There is a little setup with the deck and choosing which cards to put in there and separating them out after the game, unless you do want to play with the same ones. But another thing I think that's good is when you play with 2 players, I think it is, the way that you control the board. Area control on the board, because usually you have to play
a band that's
higher
bigger
than your previous
stack.
Or than your stack. So if you play a band of 2 and you put a token out on that space, you have 1 token on that space. So to play another there, you have to play a band of at least 2, and then once you have 2, you have to play at least 3. But then in a 2-player game, which I really like, is it's changed to the sum of all the tokens out there, you and your opponent, which I think something that changes it, that's a pretty big change.
It is very significant.
I think it works really well, and is completely makes the 2-player game equally as good as higher player counts.
Yeah, I'd agree. But then we get into presentation, and this is the low point for me so far with an 8. I mean, I don't think it's awful. I do really like the artwork of the cards. But then the board artwork leaves a little something to be desired. It's not the greatest. It's not the worst board, but it's definitely not inspiring. And even the cover to me, I mean, it's got a good look to it, but I feel like if someone did see this at a game store, they're not... Unless you really are into fantasy, maybe then you like it.
Yeah.
It might have a little bit of a darker, maybe Lord of the Rings look to it, but outside of that, I feel like so many games nowadays just have so bright of colors on their covers and stuff that I don't think this is going to sell it.
Yeah,
I
think the gameplay is a lot more approachable than the look of the game.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And even, the look of everything inside it and stuff, too, makes it look like it isn't as approachable as it is. Like, it feels like the same level almost as like a Ticket to Ride, whereas when you look at Ticket to Ride, that stuff seems much more approachable.
Yeah.
Because you got the very colorful nature of it, whereas this is a lot darker, toned down, except for the chips, which I also like in this game.
Crazy.
But they're So I like it. I understand what they're doing, and they really work well. They look cool.
Yeah, they stack
But
great.
yeah, they stack really great, but the colors don't match anything else in the game. They're almost like pastel-y colors,
Yeah,
which
I mean,
is the only bright thing in the game.
I think
But
you
it doesn't
said
match
before,
anything
they
else.
look like they would be perfect for something like Bunny Kingdom, but not this.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, I still give it an 8. It's got a decent insert, like, but it's not perfect because it's not quite
Yeah.
tight.
Yeah.
So those chips.
'Cause
The bad thing about the chips is they get loose and then they get all over the place and it's just a mess.
Yep. Yeah, I have a 7 for this.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you'd be a little lower. You seem to complain about the look of the game kind of really not meshing, which
Yeah.
it doesn't really mesh, but I think it could get by with it on the board and the cards and the cover. It's just those chips really do not fit the game. But they might be my favorite part of the production at the same time. But yeah, the art's pretty decent. I don't hate the board. It's just pretty blah. But then another thing about the board is it has a track for the points around the board, and it's a 60-point track. And I hate it has to, if it's a track around the board, it has to be either 50 or 100.
That's so close to 50 at that point. Why not just make it 50? Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I forgot about this. Should be a 7.5 or 7 because that's just unacceptable.
That is. I mean, I don't know why, but it just really bothers me.
Yeah, that's
that.
not. Yeah, that should be lower than. I was just remembering. I was like, the artwork on them. I could probably give it more of a hard time than it deserves because the board is not the greatest looking in that. Though it probably should be a 7 after talking about it a little bit more, and then especially with that score tracker, that should automatically knock down a point. So we'll, in my mind, I'll know it's a 7.
That's a warning to all those designers, those production companies. That will bump it down at least a point.
Yeah.
But on to the second P, preference, which is probably the most important category. It's just kind of how much you want to play the game and get back to it. I have this at a 9. Just like everything we've said, all the positive things we've said, in spite of the production issues, I really love the card play in the game. It's just stellar to me.
Yeah, I give it a 9 as well. It's a really solid game, and it plays well at all player counts.
Yeah.
And this one actually goes from 2 to 6, so I feel like it's a quick enough game that it even works at 6 players.
Yeah, because I think we played 5 the first time we played it at the Dork Den, our local game store, and that was great. I didn't notice any problems at that player count.
Yeah, and because sometimes when you get up to the 5-6 player counts in some games, it starts to drag on and be like a 2-3 hour game, and this one doesn't have that problem at all.
Yeah, I haven't thought of it much. This is a really good one for all player counts.
Then that gets us into our last category of it factor, and I have a 9 here, just because I think I've got fond memories of it. I don't know that it's like doing anything that makes it special, but part of the it factor too is just giving the game a little bump if you really like it. And like you had mentioned before, this is where I kind of put it. It just feels like a game like Dominion that's just asking for expansions or extra content to it, and it's just really disappointing to me that more people. It seems like I just don't see this one talked about that much. I don't know. I just wish more people did, because I feel like then it would have an expansion or two.
This is
I don't think it needs as many as Dominion. I don't think it needs that many expansions, but
we wouldn't complain. This is a Paolo Mori game, and Stonemaier Games just reprinted one of his other games, Libertalia, so maybe they'll give Ethnos.
They'll get into talks with CMON and see what they can do.
But yeah, I gave this it factor of a 5.5. A bit lower. It's hard for me to determine exactly what it factor is. I just feel like the game looks pretty generic, and even the gameplay is just getting sets of cards and playing them for some area control and some points. So, I mean, there's nothing too out there, but everything it does, I think it does it really well. Just not one that if someone's looking for it factor. Like, show me something special. I probably wouldn't show them Ethnos.
That's true. If you're looking at it like that, I would probably agree. I don't think this. I mean, it could be like the main course of a game night or something,
Yeah.
depending on the group. But I feel like this is kind of one of those middle of the night type games where
Yeah.
maybe you just
It's a mid-card game.
you started with maybe a bigger game, then you kind of, if you didn't want to go all the way down to like something like Point Salad or something small,
Yeah.
this one kind of fills that gap with
Yeah.
a medium weight game or whatever, right before maybe the main event or something.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah,
That brings me to a total Chippy rating of 8.5.
ooh, mine got to an 8.9, but probably
wow.
with that drop a little bit, it'd be a little
Yeah,
lower,
yeah.
8.7 ish or something. But I think mid 8s to
Yeah.
upper 8s is probably about where I stand on the game.
Yeah.
I think it's just a really solid game. I think the real only downsides are kind of that possibility of luck factor. If you're drawing a lot of cards
Yeah,
off the top,
yeah.
you might just be unlucky compared to the other players. So if you don't like that in your games, I just think that could come
Yeah.
to haunt you. There's not really, outside of when someone, knowing when someone's going to have to drop their hand and like
yeah.
preparing yourself, I wouldn't say there's that much extra strategy. A lot of times it just gets, the face-up cards just eventually get taken,
Yeah.
and then everyone's just drawing from the top of the deck, and then it's kind of just luck at the card. So I could see if you don't like that type of thing in games, you're probably not going to like this one very much. But I really like how it works in the game for me personally. And also, if you really like your games looking really good, it's probably not the one for you either.
Sadly. And we are pretty shallow gamers, or at least I have become a little bit of a shallow gamer, but I give this one a pass.
It's giving it a pass. Any other last comments before we check off?
Make an expansion, please!
That's all we want. But no, if you've made it this far and you like the video, give us a like. Otherwise, we're glad you stayed this long.
Hopefully we convinced you one way or the other.
Yes, and if you want to see kind of our alphabet soup videos, maybe subscribe, and then we'll talk about all the other e-games that we have.
Yes.
I don't think we have too many e-games, but
Not the
you can
biggest
go
letter.
back and look at maybe our A's, B's, C's, and
Yeah.
D's. We're recapping all the games we've played and kind of have some chippies from the different letters we've done so far as well, so definitely check those out if that sounds interesting. But otherwise, we hope to see you on the next one. As always, don't forget to
Keep on nibbling.
on our content.